good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned.
Maybe your stupid opinions aren't right. And are you so sure your life is going so much the way you want it to go, and you're such a bloody paragon of virtue, and the light is shining out every orifice, and everyone who disabuses you of your notions is evil?
In this deeply reflective episode, I explore the emotional journey of a 3-month relationship marked by intense connection, growing intimacy, and the heartbreak of avoidant behavior. Through the eyes of a secure man falling for an avoidant woman, this story traces the highs of mutual attraction, the confusion of emotional distancing, and the pain of repeated cycles of closeness followed by withdrawal. Whether you've been the one who gave your all or the one who pulled away, this episode shines a light on attachment styles, emotional pacing, and how real love sometimes hurts in silence. I also offer insights for anyone who has found themselves caught in the chase and retreat dynamic, and what it takes to grow and heal afterward. If you've ever wondered why someone pulls away just as things start getting good, this one's for you. 3 months of connection and distance, a relationship journey. Introduction. In this detailed relationship study, we explore a brief but intense 3-month romance between two individuals with very different ways of connecting emotionally. One is a man who is mostly secure in attachment. He's comfortable with intimacy and trust, yet even he can become anxious at times when faced with uncertainty. The other is a woman who shows classic avoidant behaviors. She values her independence and instinctively pulls back when someone gets too close. Over the course of their time together, they experience a whirlwind of affection and confusion, moving through distinct phases: an initial close connection, a period of growing emotional intensity, sudden episodes of distance, a repeating push-pull cycle, and ultimately a final disengagement. Throughout this journey, we will follow the emotional arc of each person, especially the man's experience as the more secure partner trying to navigate the ups and downs. We'll see how their attachment tendencies play out in everyday moments without using heavy theory or jargon, just the human side of what they feel and do. In the end, we'll also offer guidance for anyone who might find themselves in a similar dynamic, hoping to shed light on how to cope and grow through such an experience. The tone remains compassionate and objective, with no identifying details, focusing on the personal and emotional resonance of their story. The initial connection. They met, as many do, by chance through friends, and almost immediately felt a spark. From the first conversation, he was drawn to her energy and independence, and she was intrigued by his warmth and genuine interest in getting to know her. The early days of the relationship were filled with excitement and hope. Both of them felt at ease in each other's company. He, being naturally open and secure in his approach to relationships, communicated openly and listened attentively. She, despite her later reticence, was friendly and engaging at the start. In those first few weeks, their connection grew quickly. They talked for hours about their childhood memories, favorite music, and little life adventures. He found himself appreciating her self-reliance and admired that she had a full life of her own, hobbies, friends, and goals. She in turn enjoyed his attentive nature. He made her feel seen and accepted. During this honeymoon phase, everything seemed effortless. They would text each other good morning and good night, plan weekends together, and laugh over inside jokes. The man felt a surge of optimism. It seemed he had found someone special who wanted the same closeness and affection that he did. The woman, too, felt a kind of affection growing. At this early stage, the level of intimacy still felt safe and novel to her. There were no heavy commitments yet, just the thrill of a new relationship, so she could fully enjoy the chemistry without feeling trapped. It's important to note that in this phase, neither saw any warning signs. There was a natural balance. He didn't need to chase her for attention because she freely gave it, and she didn't feel smothered because the closeness was still within a comfortable range. Friends who saw them together commented on how happy and compatible they appeared. He felt confident and relaxed, being his authentic self. She was affectionate and warm, at times even enthusiastically planning future outings or talking about things they could do together down the line. If anything, he thought she was as invested as he was. This strong initial bond laid the foundation and perhaps set the stage for the more turbulent times that would follow once the relationship moved past the initial rush. Deepening emotions. As the first month passed, their bond deepened. What began as a fun, lighthearted connection started to develop into something more emotionally significant for both of them. During this phase of emotional escalation, feelings grew in intensity. The man, with his secure tendencies, was comfortable with how close they were becoming. He felt proud to call her his partner and began to truly care about her well-being. Around this time, he likely expressed his feelings more openly, perhaps telling her how much she meant to him, or showing it through affectionate gestures like surprise dinner plans or a heartfelt handwritten note. Each act of closeness felt natural to him because building a loving bond was something he welcomed and didn't fear. The woman enjoyed many of these moments too. She wasn't immune to the warmth of a deepening connection. On a pleasant evening walk, or during a cozy movie night at home, she could feel the stirrings of genuine affection for him. In her own subtle ways, she showed care. Maybe she opened up about a personal dream or a childhood story she rarely shared, or she made room for him in her normally independent routine. These were signs that she trusted him more and valued his presence. For a while, he took these as signals that their relationship was on a steady, happy path. However, as the intimacy increased, she also began to experience an undercurrent of discomfort that she couldn't quite articulate. It was nothing dramatic at first, just small flickers of unease. For someone with an avoidant inclination, the closer you get to another person, the more vulnerable you start to feel. And vulnerability to her subconscious mind equated to risk. She had been so used to relying on herself and keeping an emotional buffer that the realization of how much she liked him, how much power he might have to hurt her if things went wrong, planted the first seeds of fear. From the man's perspective, around this time he might have noticed minor changes that he couldn't put his finger on. After an especially heartfelt weekend together, maybe she seemed a little quieter for a day or two. When he said something deeply caring, perhaps she responded a bit awkwardly or changed the subject briefly. These moments were fleeting and followed by normalcy, so he brushed them off. He assumed she, like him, was feeling the same strong love and was simply content, or maybe a little shy with big feelings. In his world, growing closer was purely positive. He had no reason to imagine it could trigger anxiety in her. Thus, he continued to give his heart freely, not knowing that this very closeness was awakening her long-buried instinct to pull back. 2. The first signs of distancing. Not long after their relationship hit its peak of intimacy in the second month, the woman gradually began to create distance. The shift was subtle at first. She still cared about him, and in many moments she was the same sweet and engaging person. But as her internal tension grew, it quietly started to affect her behavior. Perhaps she took longer to reply to his messages, where before she would text back eagerly within minutes. On some days she suggested she was too tired to meet up, when previously she would have moved things around to see him. Small excuses entered the conversation: a sudden busy week at work, needing a night to herself, feeling a bit under the weather. To an outside observer, these might sound like normal life things, and indeed the man initially saw them as such. He told himself, everyone needs space now and then. It's okay. She's just busy, not pulling away from me. His secure nature inclined him to give benefit of the doubt and remain supportive rather than immediately panicking. However, as days went by, these instances of distancing became more frequent. The warmth of her tone cooled slightly. When they were together, she sometimes seemed distracted, lost in her thoughts. Cuddling on the couch, he could feel that she was emotionally a bit elsewhere, even if physically present. Gone were the spontaneous mentions of future plans from her side. Instead of, "We should go to that concert next month," she began to say things like, "Yeah, maybe. We'll see," or avoid committing to plans too far ahead. These were the first concrete cracks in the smooth surface of their once easygoing connection. Inside her mind, a complex mix of emotions brewed. The woman was likely feeling overwhelmed by the growing closeness. It wasn't that she disliked him. On the contrary, she truly did like him, and that actually fueled her fear. The more she valued him, the more she worried, often subconsciously, about losing herself or getting hurt. This fear might have stemmed from past experiences where getting too close led to pain, or simply an ingrained instinct that closeness equals danger to her independence. Her solution to this internal panic was to retreat. By putting a bit of emotional and physical space between them, she could breathe easier and regain a sense of control. For the man, this change was confusing and distressing. Because he generally has a secure style, he hadn't been overly anxious until now. But with her growing distant, he started to feel a twinge of worry nearly every day. When his phone chimed, he hoped it was a message from her, with the same enthusiasm as before. Sometimes it was, but other times it wasn't, and he would feel a pang of disappointment. He found himself rereading their old, cheerful text exchanges, trying to pinpoint if he had said something wrong or if something had happened that caused her to withdraw. On one or two occasions, he gently asked if everything was all right, mentioning that she seemed a bit stressed or different. She always answered that she was fine, just busy, tired, and flashed him a quick, reassuring smile. Not wanting to seem insecure, he didn't push her further, but the uneasy feeling in his gut grew. This period was essentially the onset of the push-pull dynamic that would define the next phase of their relationship. Neither person explicitly acknowledged the shift yet. He tried to act like nothing was wrong, apart from offering help if she was stressed, and she tried to act as normal as possible despite the distance she was inserting. Yet, under the surface, both were slowly moving into an emotional tug-of-war. He was preparing to pull her closer to regain the intimacy they had, and she was poised to push away even further if she felt too cornered. The push-pull cycle. By the third month, the relationship had turned into an emotional roller coaster. The once steady closeness now oscillated back and forth in a classic push-pull pattern. Neither of them wanted things to fall apart, but their instincts led them into a cycle that was difficult to break. It often began with him sensing her distancing and reacting. After enduring a stretch of coolness or minimal contact from her, the man's worry and longing would reach a peak. In response, he would pull, that is, he'd seek closeness and reassurance. For instance, after not seeing each other for several days, when previously they met often, he might call her and say he missed her and would love to spend some time together if she's free. Or he might send a heartfelt text expressing that he was thinking of her. In essence, he was trying to reignite the warmth and get back to where they had been. This was his way of fighting for the relationship he cherished. Sometimes this worked, at least temporarily. There were moments she responded to his pull with a return of warmth. Perhaps she agreed to a date night after avoiding plans, and during that evening, she relaxed again. They might have shared a genuinely tender night, talking closely or even being intimate, and it felt to him like a relief, a sign that, yes, there she is. The woman I fell for is back with me. In these reconciling moments, she too often enjoyed the closeness. Avoidant or not, she still had feelings for him, and when enough space had been taken for her to feel safe, she could let her guard down for a bit and experience the intimacy without immediate panic. These phases felt like breakthroughs. They laughed like old times. She reached out to hold his hand again, and he felt a surge of hope and love, believing that maybe the rough patch was over. But inevitably, as soon as things headed back toward a level of intimacy that triggered her fears, the other side of the cycle kicked in. The very closeness that he reestablished would start to alarm her once more. Perhaps after a weekend of deep connection, he felt confident and brought up a future plan, like suggesting they attend a family event together, or simply assuming they might have a next getaway in a month. That hint of expectation or commitment could have made her inner alarms ring again, or maybe nothing explicit was said. Sometimes just the internal realization of, I'm feeling attached to him, was enough for her subconscious to hit the brakes. When she felt that discomfort, she would push away again. This could manifest as her pulling back right after a nice time together. For example, after a close weekend, she might suddenly go silent for a day or two, or become very slow to respond to his messages that week. Alternatively, she might start an unnecessary argument over something minor, not out of malice, but as a way to create distance or justify her withdrawal. One day she might snap at him for a trivial reason or say she's feeling crowded when he thought he was just being affectionate. The man would be left bewildered. Everything had just been wonderful, and now it felt like 2 steps back again. This push-pull cycle repeated itself perhaps several times in that third month. Every time she pulled away, he felt more anxious and desperate to fix things, and every time he chased or pressed for closeness, she felt more need to escape. It was an emotionally draining dance for both of them. The highs in this period were intoxicating. When she came back and things were good, he felt a rush of relief and happiness, and she felt the comfort of love without loneliness. But the lows were painful. When she was cold or absent, he felt abandoned and full of self-doubt, while she felt irritated or guilty, and even more pressured by his attempts to get close. 4. One illustrative incident could be a night where he finally voiced some of his concerns. He might have said something like, I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't understand what's changed. Did I do something wrong? It wasn't an accusation, just a vulnerable expression of hurt. Such honesty is normally healthy, but for her, hearing this may have felt like being cornered. She perhaps responded defensively or with a minimal explanation. I'm just going through a lot, okay? I told you it's not about you. She might have even become upset that he was pressuring her for answers. In reality, he was simply seeking reassurance, but through her eyes, it was another demand on her emotionally, something she wasn't equipped to handle at that intensity. That conversation may have ended without resolution, leaving him feeling unheard and her feeling misunderstood. Over time, the man who started out so secure found himself behaving in ways he never expected. He became preoccupied with the relationship status, checking his phone anxiously, experiencing spikes of jealousy or fear when he didn't hear from her. His self-esteem took a hit as well. He wondered if he was somehow not enough for her or too much for her. It was profoundly confusing. How could they share such beautiful moments, only for her to act like those moments frightened her? He loved that they could be so close, and he believed if they just got through this rough patch, it could be beautiful again consistently. This hope kept him in the cycle, trying again and again to reach her. For the woman, each cycle reinforced her internal struggle. She likely felt conflicted. A part of her cared for him and, in the good moments, even considered whether she could be happier if she just let herself fully embrace the relationship. But that thought was quickly overpowered by her fear of being swallowed up by love or depending on someone. Every time she retreated and saw how much he was affected, she felt a mix of relief and guilt. Relief, because maintaining distance made her feel safe and in control. Guilt, because she knew he was hurting and she did not truly wish to hurt him. Yet, she didn't know how to bridge the gap without feeling like she was losing herself. Instead of addressing these fears openly, which would require a level of vulnerability she wasn't ready for, she stayed silent about them and let her actions speak by distancing. This lack of communication made it impossible for him to understand her inner reality, perpetuating the painful push and pull. The final disengagement. Eventually, the strain of the push-pull dynamic reached a breaking point. 3 months into the relationship, it became clear that the pattern couldn't continue without someone getting deeply hurt. In truth, both already were hurting, but up until this stage, there was still an unspoken hope keeping them going. His hope that she would return to the loving partner he knew at the start. And her hope, deep down, that things might magically resolve without her having to confront her fears. When that hope finally gave way to exhaustion, the end of the relationship arrived. The final disengagement did not happen explosively with dramatic fights. Rather, it unfolded in a somber, emotionally charged closing chapter. It often starts with one partner initiating the talk, and in their case, it was likely the woman who finally did so. Perhaps after another round of withdrawing and chasing, she realized that she couldn't truly be what he needed and felt increasingly suffocated by his understandable desire for clarity and closeness. One evening, she might have come over with a heavy heart, knowing what she needed to say. Sitting down, she might have expressed something along the lines of, "I don't think I can do this anymore," in a quiet voice. She probably struggled to explain her feelings fully. Avoidant individuals often have difficulty articulating the real reasons because even acknowledging those reasons, fear of intimacy, feeling overwhelmed, is hard for them to discuss. Instead, she might have given reasons that sounded vague or like personal issues. "It's not your fault. I just feel I'm not ready for a relationship. I need to be alone right now." Or, "You've been wonderful to me, but something doesn't feel right and I can't continue." For the man, hearing these words was devastating, even if he had sensed them coming. A wave of emotions crashed over him: shock, hurt, confusion, and even a bit of desperation. He might have asked, "Why? I thought we really had something. Can we work on this?" His voice likely shook as he tried to keep composure. If tears weren't falling yet, they were welling up in his eyes. He would search her face for any sign that she was unsure about ending it, any sign that perhaps he could convince her to stay. He reminded her of the good times, maybe saying, "I know things have been tough lately, but I really believe we can get back to how we were. I'm willing to do what it takes. I care about you so much." In his mind, this relationship was worth fighting for. After all, he had seen how amazing it could be, and he loved her. Losing it all so abruptly felt wrong and heartbreaking. The woman, however, remained resolute, albeit sadly so. By this point, her decision to disengage was firm enough that even his heartfelt pleas couldn't easily sway her. She likely apologized, perhaps even with tears in her own eyes, because she did feel sorrow. Yet she maintained her stance. She just couldn't continue, insisting that it was something within her that was the problem. She might have said, "You didn't do anything wrong. It's about me. I just can't handle this." Or, "I'm sorry I hurt you. You deserve someone who can be all in, and I realize I can't right now." These phrases, while possibly sincere, still left him without a concrete understanding. In truth, she herself might not fully grasp the complex psychology driving her to leave. She only knew that the relationship had become too emotionally demanding for her comfort. The conversation likely ended with a painful finality. Perhaps they exchanged a last tearful hug at the door, or perhaps she left quickly, unable to handle a prolonged goodbye. He was left in a quiet room that suddenly felt emptier than ever, while she walked away, feeling a mix of relief and grief. The final disengagement was like ripping off a bandage, quick in the moment, but leaving a stinging wound that would take time to heal. The relationship that started with such promise had ended not with angry shouts, but with a sad understanding that despite their care for each other, they were caught in a dynamic neither knew how to fix. For the man, that night was one of raw heartbreak. In the hours or days immediately after, he probably replayed everything in his mind, searching for answers. How could it go from loving whispers to complete silence? Had she ever truly loved him, or was it all an illusion? He might have even second-guessed the entire relationship, wondering if he had been duped by her early affection. The abrupt transition from warm connection to a cold goodbye was incredibly hard to process. There was no big betrayal he could pinpoint, no clear flaw in her or him to blame, just a profound incompatibility in how they loved each other. This lack of a clear reason made it all the more bewildering and painful. As for the woman, after disengaging, she likely felt immediate relief in one sense. The tension and pressure she'd been feeling were gone. She no longer had to constantly manage her fear of closeness because the source of that closeness, the relationship, was now removed. That night, she might have gone home and simply sat in the quiet of her room, feeling oddly calm. Yet, human emotions are never that simple. Alongside relief, a sadness hung over her. She did care for him. He had been nothing but kind and loving to her. She might have cried softly, mourning the loss of the warm moments they shared, but she would justify to herself that this was the only viable path. In her mind, ending it was perhaps the only way to regain her equilibrium. She told herself that in time he would be better off without her, and that she needed to focus on herself. With those thoughts, she pushed away any further pangs of regret. After all, facing those might pull her into an emotional place she wasn't prepared to go, and so just like that, the 3-month relationship came to an end. It ended not because of a lack of love or compatibility in interests, but because of a clash in attachment needs. One person needing more closeness and reassurance, and the other needing more space and emotional safety. The final disengagement was the culmination of all the small fractures that had been appearing since the end of the honeymoon phase. It was a quiet, sorrowful conclusion to a relationship that, in another world, or with different hearts, might have flourished. Emotional aftermath and impact on each partner. The end of the relationship marked the beginning of a new and difficult emotional chapter for both of them. In the immediate aftermath, their experiences diverged in line with their personalities and attachment tendencies. For the man, the securely attached partner, who had become anxious through this turmoil, the days and weeks after the breakup were filled with heartache and soul-searching. In the beginning, every morning, he would wake up and, for a blissful split second, forget that she was gone. Then reality would crash in. She left. It's over. That realization felt like a heavy weight on his chest. He missed her terribly, not just the physical presence of her, but all the little daily connections, the goodnight texts, the shared meals, her laughter at his jokes. Her absence created a void in his life that he didn't quite know how to fill. He also grappled with confusion and self-doubt. Being a reasonably secure person, he had not often been in a position of such intense rejection, so he tried to make sense of it logically. Was it something I did? Could I have done more? Was I too needy? He went over their conversations repeatedly in his mind, sometimes late into the night. It was emotionally exhausting, like endlessly rereading the same chapter of a book, looking for a different meaning that just wasn't there. The lack of clear answers tested his normally stable sense of self. Where he once felt confident, he now felt inadequate and even a bit foolish, thinking, did I misjudge the whole relationship? How could I not see this coming? During this period, it was natural that he experienced a full spectrum of emotions. At times, he felt anger or frustration. Anger at the situation, maybe even a bit at her. Why did she lead me on if she couldn't handle love? And at himself. Why did I hold on so long when she started pulling away? Other times, he felt deep sadness and immense grief for the future he had envisioned with her that would never come to pass. There were also moments of relief in a strange way, relief that the dizzying uncertainty was over, even if the ending hurt. At least now he knew where they stood, instead of waking up each day on the emotional seesaw of push and pull. This relief often brought guilt with it. How could he be even a little relieved about something he so desperately wanted to avoid? This inner conflict is common for someone healing from an inconsistent relationship dynamic. It takes time to reconcile the love for the person with the relief that the painful pattern is over. Being secure at his core, the man did have healthy coping resources to eventually draw on, even if it was hard at first. He confided in close friends or a family member about what happened, and in doing so, he slowly started to gain perspective. A friend might have pointed out, I saw how she treated you sometimes. You were putting in so much and getting so little back toward the end. You deserve someone who doesn't make you feel like that. These words were comforting, and little by little he began to see that his worth was not defined by her ability to accept his love. He realized intellectually that her avoidance was about her fears, not about him lacking anything. Emotionally, of course, it still stung, but this understanding was the seed of his healing. Over the next few months, he focused on self-care and reflection. Perhaps he picked up hobbies that he had neglected, spent more time with friends, or even read about relationship dynamics to better understand what he had gone through. It's possible he came across the concept of attachment styles in his reading, and suddenly a lot of things clicked into place. Avoidant behavior, fear of intimacy, anxious response, giving him a framework to understand that he was far from alone in this experience. With that knowledge, he became more compassionate with himself, recognizing that he did the best he could. His naturally secure disposition aided him in not closing off to love entirely. Rather than swearing off relationships, he told himself that this was a learning experience. He acknowledged the pain, gave himself time to grieve, and then cautiously remained open to future love, determined that next time he would recognize the signs of such a dynamic early and communicate his needs more clearly before it went too far. In essence, the experience hurt him, but also taught him about his own boundaries and the importance of finding a truly emotionally available partner. For the woman, the aftermath unfolded differently. Immediately after the breakup, as mentioned, she felt a sense of calm and relief that the intense push-pull cycle was over. The pressure valve had been released. She was no longer constantly worried about a partner getting too close because there was no partner at all now. In the short term, this brought her a kind of peace. She likely threw herself back into parts of life that made her feel secure and in control. Work might have been one area she could focus on her job or personal projects with renewed intensity, using busyness as a way to keep any uncomfortable emotions at bay. She also might have re-engaged with friends or activities she enjoyed solo, reminding herself of the independence she cherished. But even as she tried to carry on as normal, she couldn't completely erase the emotional impact of those 3 months. In quieter moments, memories of the relationship would surface, the way he smiled at her from across the table, or how safe it felt in his arms on one of their happy days. When these thoughts bubbled up, they were accompanied by a complex mix of feelings. She did feel sadness and loss, though she might not have shown it outwardly. Perhaps late at night, alone, she allowed herself to feel a fraction of that grief and shed a few tears. However, almost reflexively, she would then tap into her well-practiced coping mechanism, emotional suppression. She would remind herself of all the reasons the breakup was for the best. She might think, it wouldn't have worked out anyway, I was feeling trapped, or he'll be better off and so will I, this is less complicated. These rationalizations helped her push down the sorrow and any regret that tried to emerge. An interesting aspect of her avoidant processing was how she framed the relationship's end in her mind. To reduce any sense of personal guilt or failure, she might have focused on certain negatives, however few there were. Maybe she told herself that their lifestyles were too different, or that he ultimately wanted more than she could give, and thus they were incompatible. Perhaps she zeroed in on the times he asked for more attention as him being too demanding, thus justifying why it couldn't work. By viewing the breakup through a lens that favored her decision, she protected herself from the full weight of remorse. This is not to say she was cold-hearted. It was simply her way of emotionally surviving and keeping pain at a manageable distance. In the longer term, if we look months beyond, the woman might have continued this pattern in future relationships if she didn't confront her avoidant tendencies. The pain was not fully processed, just tucked away. It's possible that occasionally she thought of him and wondered, what if I had tried harder or opened up more? Those thoughts could spark a bittersweet feeling, but almost as quickly as they came, she would likely dismiss them with a sigh. Truly delving into those questions would mean facing her fear of intimacy head on, which is something avoidant individuals often delay or avoid altogether. Without intervention or a strong motivation to change, she would stay in her comfort zone, independent, self-reliant, and cautious with her heart. However, human hearts have a way of remembering meaningful connections. It's conceivable that in quiet moments, perhaps triggered by a familiar song or passing by a place they used to go, she felt a wistfulness, even if she never reached out to him, and she likely didn't out of the desire to keep the clean break and not appear vulnerable. She did carry the experience with her. In her own guarded way, she learned something too. She learned that someone genuinely cared for her and that she pushed that person away. Whether she was ready to change from that realization is uncertain, but the imprint of the relationship remained somewhere in her psyche. In summary, the psychological impact on both was significant, but manifested differently. He experienced intense pain, but used it as an opportunity for growth and self-understanding, reaffirming his values in love and what he will accept in the future. She experienced a mix of relief and buried sorrow, reinforcing her protective barriers while carrying a quiet burden of what might have been, a lesson unspoken that may or may not later inspire her to address her fear of closeness. Both embarked on separate healing journeys, carrying forward the lessons of their 3-month relationship. Lessons about love, themselves, and the importance of emotional balance between intimacy and independence. Guidance for individuals in similar dynamics. If you find yourself in a relationship that sounds much like the one described, perhaps you see yourself in the secure but increasingly anxious partner, or in the avoidant partner feeling overwhelmed, it's important to know that you are not alone and that there are ways to navigate this challenging dynamic. Here are some guiding insights and suggestions for those experiencing a similar push-pull, anxious avoidant cycle. open communication early. It might feel difficult or even scary, but expressing your feelings and needs clearly to your partner can make a big difference. If you're the one feeling anxious and confused by a partner's distancing, calmly let them know what you observe and how it makes you feel. Use I statements, such as, I feel worried when you withdraw because I care about you and want to know how you're feeling. If you're the avoidant partner, it can help to gently explain your need for space before it reaches a breaking point. For example, I value our time together, but I also need occasional alone time to recharge. It's just how I am, not a sign of lost interest. These conversations can be hard, but they create a chance for mutual understanding. Respect personal boundaries, including your own. In a push-pull dynamic, each person's boundaries can get tested frequently. It's crucial to respect what each person is comfortable with. For the partner who needs closeness, often the anxious or secure one, recognize that pushing your partner to open up or be present when they're not ready can backfire. Give them the space they ask for within reason. That doesn't mean you suffer in silence. It just means you acknowledge their feelings as valid. For the partner who needs space, the avoidant one, be mindful not to take more distance than necessary to the point of neglecting your partner's basic emotional needs. It's a balance. Both of you should feel you have room to be yourselves, but also feel reasonably connected. Avoid the chase and withdrawal game. It's natural to want to chase someone you feel slipping away, or to run away when someone is coming on too strong emotionally. However, recognize this pattern if it emerges. Take a step back and assess. Is your behavior driven by fear of losing them, or fear of losing yourself? Instead of acting on impulse, chasing harder, or pulling away further, take a pause. If you're the one inclined to chase, try to engage in activities that ground you in your own life. Spend time with friends, hobbies, or even journaling your feelings, rather than fixating on your partner's every move. If you're inclined to withdraw, practice sitting with the discomfort a little longer than usual, or communicating, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed and just need a day to myself, but I'm not abandoning what we have. Small assurances like that can prevent a lot of pain on the other side. Breaking the cycle requires both people to slightly adjust their instinctual responses. Maintain your self-worth and identity. For anyone in this situation, it's important to keep a firm hold on your sense of self. The secure, anxious partner should remember that their worth is not defined by the avoidant partner's ability to give love. You might start to feel like you're too needy or not enough, but those are misleading thoughts that come from the insecurity the dynamic breeds. Remind yourself of your strengths, spend time with people who appreciate you, and engage in activities that make you feel confident and happy. The avoidant partner should also maintain their sense of self, but that usually isn't the issue. In fact, they over-maintain it to the point of isolation. If you're avoidant, challenge yourself gently to let your partner in just a little more, and notice that doing so does not actually erase who you are. A healthy relationship doesn't require you to lose your identity. It should allow both individuals to be true to themselves while growing together. Seek understanding. Knowledge is power. Sometimes learning about these dynamics can bring a lot of clarity. Just as the man in our story eventually learned about attachment styles and realized what had happened, you too might benefit from understanding the patterns at play. There are many resources, books, reputable online articles, or even speaking to a therapist that can shed light on why you or your partner react in certain ways. This isn't to label anyone or excuse hurtful behavior, but to give context. When you realize, my partner isn't distancing because I'm unlovable, but because they fear intimacy due to their own past, it can transform hurt into empathy. Conversely, if you're the one who fears intimacy, Learning that my urge to run comes from a place of protection, not because my partner is doing something wrong, can help you communicate that and perhaps gradually change it. Knowledge can be very empowering and healing. Consider professional help if needed. Some patterns are deeply rooted and hard to change on your own, especially if the cycle has caused significant pain or if both people really want to make the relationship work but feel stuck. Couples therapy can provide a neutral space to voice feelings, with a trained mediator helping decode the attachment dance. Individual therapy is also extremely valuable for the anxious partner to build tools for self soothing and secure communication, for the avoidant partner to learn how to cope with the vulnerability of intimacy and express their needs without shutting down. Therapy isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of commitment to growth. It can offer personalized strategies that go a long way in breaking unhealthy cycles. Know when to let go. As hard as it is to accept, not every relationship, especially one deep in a toxic push pull cycle, can be saved by sheer will or love alone. It takes both individuals actively wanting to work on the pattern to truly improve it. If you find that you are the only one trying, or that despite efforts, the cycle of hurt continues unabated, it may be time to consider walking away for the sake of your emotional well being. Letting go is painful, but sometimes staying causes even deeper wounds. Remember the man's journey, how much anguish he went through trying to hold on. In hindsight, if one partner cannot or will not meet the other even halfway, stepping back might be the healthiest choice. If you do choose to end such a relationship, do so with compassion for both yourself and the other person. Understand that it's not because either of you are bad people, but because your needs in a relationship weren't compatible at this time. And just as he eventually did, trust that you can heal and find a love that doesn't constantly hurt or leave you guessing. Focus on personal growth. Whichever side of the dynamic you identify with, use the experience as a mirror to learn about yourself. The greatest silver lining of these emotionally trying relationships is that they spotlight areas within us that might need attention. Maybe you discover that you have a tendency to ignore red flags because you desperately want love and you learn to set healthier boundaries next time. Or maybe you realize you push people away when they get too close and you decide to slowly practice more openness with those who earn your trust. Personal growth can come through journaling, meditation, self help books, or again, therapy. It can also come simply through introspection, asking yourself, what have I learned from this, and how can I apply it moving forward? When you approach it this way, even a painful relationship can lead to positive change in your life. Lastly, remember that you are worthy of a stable, healthy love. The dynamic we explored is sadly common, but it's not the only path relationships can take. Secure and fulfilling partnerships do exist and are achievable when two people are aware of their emotional patterns and communicate openly. If you were the anxious one, work on cultivating that inner security and know that there are partners out there who will match your level of intimacy without triggering those fears so intensely. If you were the avoidant one, know that you're not doomed to always run. With effort and the right person who respects your pace, you can find comfort in connection. Healing from or changing a push-pull relationship dynamic takes patience, time, and often some tears, but growth does follow. Be kind to yourself throughout the process. Seek support from friends, support groups, or professionals who understand these issues. Over time, both anxious and avoidant tendencies can move toward a more secure way of relating. The man in our story, for example, learned to preserve his sense of self and recognize his limits, and the woman, we can hope, might one day feel safe enough to remain close to someone who truly cares. In conclusion, relationships like the one we've detailed are emotionally intense and challenging, but they also shine a light on the importance of balance and mutual understanding in love. If you're in the thick of it, take heart. With self-awareness and compassion for yourself and your partner, it's possible to break free of the painful cycle. You deserve a relationship where love doesn't constantly equate to pain, where you don't have to lose yourself to be with someone, and where you don't have to push someone away to keep yourself safe. Strive for that balance, closeness with breathing room, intimacy with respect for boundaries, because that is where healthy, secure love lies. Every experience, even the heartbreaking ones, can guide you closer to the love and peace you seek. Hey, come check out You Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 ducks. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.